I first witnessed our system at work when I was 19. Not in a classroom or during political education, but in real life, live, in Pyongyang's Central Square. A public execution. The crowd stood still, not because they wanted to watch, but because absence from such events is noticed. The man on the platform was about 45, with a military bearing, a general until recently. The charges were read out monotonously, like a shopping list. Treason, corruption, disrespect for the supreme leader. Then, an anti-aircraft gun. Not a gallows, not a firing squad. A gun. Nothing remained of the man. That was also part of the message. Intentional. An officer standing nearby stared straight ahead, his face like stone. I stood beside him, also staring straight ahead. Then everyone dispersed. Life went on. I won't tell you my real name. Call me Pac. That's enough. I worked for a structure that officially doesn't exist. An operational department within the Reconnaissance General Bureau of the DPRK General Staff, specializing in what documents denote with a single letter. I spent a total of 8 years abroad, in various countries, under different names, with diverse assignments. My main task was singular. When Pyongyang said, eliminate, I eliminated. Cleanly. Without a trace, without questions. I'll tell you how it starts. Not with a grand speech about the homeland and the great leader. It begins with a math test. I was 17, attending a specialized school in Pyongyang. There are several such schools. They select children from correct families with correct backgrounds and correct loyalty check results. My father was an officer. His father was an officer. 3 generations of impeccable records. This was more important than any ability. Abilities can be developed, but a record cannot be changed. We were taught mathematics, chemistry, and foreign languages. I chose Japanese and Chinese, not because I loved languages, but because I felt they were tools, useful tools. At 18, a man without insignia arrived. He sat across from me in the classroom and placed a sheet of paper with a problem on the table. Not a military one, but a logical puzzle. How to remove a person from a building who doesn't want to leave, without attracting attention. Several options were provided. I had to choose the optimal one. I thought for about 3 minutes. I wrote down the answer, not the most obvious, but the cleanest in terms of traces and witnesses. The man without insignia read it. He nodded, took the paper, left. A month later, I was taken from school. Training lasted 3 years. I won't list everything. I'll just mention the main points. There were 12 of us in the group. By the end of the 3rd year, 7 remained. 2 were expelled for unsuitability. 1 suffered a psychological breakdown in the 2nd year, and 2 disappeared during practical assignments under unexplained circumstances that no one spoke of aloud. You understood what that meant. You kept silent and continued working. Languages were drilled to automatic fluency. I thought in Japanese as easily as in Korean. Personal legends were built over years. I was a Japanese citizen, Masaru Yamamoto, a sales representative for an industrial equipment company. A full biography, confirmed contacts, tax history, several business partners who would, if necessary, confirm our acquaintance. Living, real people. This comes at a high cost, not in money, but in resources and time. Physical training was standard. Martial arts, weapons, survival. But the main thing they taught wasn't technique. It was patience and invisibility. The most dangerous person in a room is the one no one notices. I learned to be exactly that. Moderate, pleasant, memorable, just enough so as not to seem suspiciously unmemorable. First assignment. Beijing, 2009. A defector, a former diplomat, who crossed the Chinese border and began speaking with foreign journalists. He spoke extensively and specifically. Names, schemes, structures that were supposed to remain invisible. I was sent to stop that conversation. I flew to Beijing as Masaru Yamamoto on company business. I booked a room in a mid-range hotel in Chaoyang, neither cheap nor expensive, precisely the kind where hundreds of Japanese businessmen stay, and where staff see you as a room number, not a person. 4 days of surveillance. The defector lived in an apartment found for him by people connected to foreign organizations. A quiet neighborhood, 3rd floor. His habits already formed. He went out for food at the same time. He went to the same cafe for breakfast. Habits are always a problem. I've said it before, or I will soon. At the cafe, I sat at a neighboring table. A Japanese businessman with a laptop and coffee looking at the screen, noticing no one. We started talking by chance. He initiated it. People alone often strike up conversations with those who appear harmless. We talked about nothing in particular. The weather, Beijing, the nice cafe. I offered him a cigarette. He thanked me. The next morning we greeted each other like acquaintances. On the third morning I joined him at his table. I brought 2 coffees. My treat. He accepted. 40 minutes later, he felt unwell. He asked for the bill, left, and reached the street corner. An ambulance called by a passerby picked him up there. At the hospital, doctors recorded acute heart failure. 41 years old, non-smoker, moderate drinker, stress. It happens. By that time, I was already in a taxi on my way to the airport. Flight to Tokyo at 3:40 p.m. No one was waiting for me in Tokyo. I spent 3 days there as an ordinary tourist for my cover story, then took another flight home. In Pyongyang, my handler received me briefly. His name was Colonel Lee, small, lean, with a quiet way of speaking that made you lean forward and listen intently. A clever trick. Those who speak softly are listened to. He said, "Good," and that was all. No details, no assessment of the work. Good meant accepted. In our system, that's enough. The second assignment was more challenging. Singapore, 2012. A South Korean businessman who, through shell companies, funded organizations helping North Koreans escape across the Chinese border. Technically, he was a South Korean citizen engaged in charity. Factually, he was a problem that needed solving. Singapore is not Beijing. Cameras are everywhere, literally everywhere, on every corner, in every lobby, in every mall. The police are efficient and swift. Accidental deaths are investigated more thoroughly here than elsewhere. I spent 2 weeks there before I understood his routine. He was a runner. Every morning, the same park along the bay, the same time. 15 years, the same route. He even spoke about it in interviews, proud of his discipline. Habits again. I rented an apartment in a nearby neighborhood. I also started running in the mornings, in the same park, at the same time. Within a week, we were nodding to each other like people who regularly see each other on the same running path. 10 days later, he stopped to talk. A Japanese businessman living in Singapore, also a runner, an interesting person. We talked about running shoes and how to stretch properly after a long run. The next day, he brought me some Korean energy drink from his home. "Try it," he said. "It's good for recovery." I thanked him, took it, didn't drink it. 3 days later, he felt unwell after his usual morning run. 2 days later, he died in the hospital. Diagnosis: acute kidney failure, a rare complication from excessive physical exertion in hot weather. His family was devastated. The police closed the case 3 weeks later. An accident. I flew out 4 days before his death. Flight to Tokyo, then home. Colonel Lee, my handler, again said, "Good." I asked once, only once in all that time, never again. Where do the assignments come from? Who makes the decisions? Lee looked at me for a long time. Then he said quietly, "You receive an assignment. You carry out the assignment. The rest are not your questions." I nodded. I didn't ask again. It was the right system. The less you know, the less you can reveal. The less you think about where decisions come from, the more soundly you sleep. I learned not to think about it. Almost learned. Kuala Lumpur, February 2017. The assignment came through Lee, as always, verbally, without paper, without records. He sat across from me in the windowless room I knew by heart, the crack in the ceiling in the right corner, the damp smell no air conditioner could mask, the chair by the door where an unnamed person whose function was unclear always sat. Lee placed a photograph on the table. A man around 45. Plump, soft face, expensive suit. Laughing in the photo. A wide, genuine laugh, not for the camera. We usually don't get photos like that. Usually official, documentary shots. This one was vibrant. It made me pause for a second. Lee said the name. I already knew that name. Everyone in our system knew that name. Kim Jong-nam, the elder brother. The one who could have been in the current supreme leader's place but wasn't. For years, he lived abroad. Macau, Beijing, traveling. He told foreign journalists various things. He remained alive. Until now. Until now. Lee explained briefly. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, flight to Macau. Date known. The instrument, VX. A nerve agent, a few milligrams on the skin, death within 20 minutes. 2 operatives, women, a separate group, already prepared. My role, on-site coordination, observation, confirmation, not the hands, the eyes in control. I asked, why women? Lee said, because women aren't noticed in an airport. A man with a camera is remembered. A woman adjusting her makeup isn't. Logical. Kuala Lumpur greeted me with heat and humidity that pressed down immediately upon exiting the plane. I booked a room in an airport hotel. Convenient. Explained by being in transit, no unnecessary city movements. Masaru Yamamoto flying to Jakarta. Flight delay. Staying in a hotel for 2 days. Clean. I saw the women once before the operation, in a shopping mall near the airport. A chance encounter of strangers by an electronics display. One was named Doan Thi Huong, Vietnamese, 28. Beautiful, lively, laughed easily. I looked at her and thought, she doesn't know what she's carrying. They were told it was a prank for television. You smear a person's face with a special substance. The reaction is filmed by a hidden camera. It's a show. They were paid and promised more. They believed it. I knew it wasn't a show. February 13th. I stood in Terminal 2 near the check-in area with coffee and my phone, an ordinary transit passenger killing time. I watched. At 8:59 a.m. he appeared, a plump man with a small suitcase, walking towards the check-in counter. He walked calmly, perhaps thinking of Macau, of something personal. Doan approached him from behind, quickly, confidently. She had rehearsed this many times, thinking she was rehearsing a prank. Right hand to his face. A second. Less than a second. She moved away. The second woman, Siti, an Indonesian, struck from the other side almost simultaneously. He turned around, surprised, not scared, precisely like someone who had just been pranked. Maybe he even smiled. I didn't see it, I was too far away. I was already walking towards the exit. He asked airport staff for help 20 minutes later, said he felt unwell. Medical station, stretcher. He died in the ambulance an hour and 20 minutes after contact. The substance worked as it was supposed to. In the hotel room, I sat and stared at the wall. Not for long, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. It wasn't pity. I don't allow myself pity. It's a professional deformation that kills you faster than any counterintelligence. It was something else. Something connected to that photograph where he was laughing. Genuinely laughing. I rarely saw such photos in our line of work. Then I stood up, packed my things, left. The airport was buzzing. Malaysian police were already cordoning off areas. Cameras were being reviewed. People were being questioned. I checked in for my flight to Jakarta without a single delay. Japanese businessman on business. Everything in. Order. The women were arrested the same day. Both of them. They said it was a prank. They spoke sincerely because they sincerely believed it. Malaysian investigators didn't believe them. Both were tried. Doan received a sentence, then was released on appeal. City too. They knew nothing beyond what they were told. They still live with that. I think about them sometimes. Rarely. But I do. In Pyongyang, my handler Lee received me in the same room with the same crack in the ceiling. He was silent longer than usual. Then he said, "Not good, not bad." He said, Assignment closed. He stood up. Left. Assignment closed. For several months, I worked on internal tasks, analysis, training others. This is a time when everything seems normal on the outside, but something is methodically changing within. Not breaking, changing. Like metal that has been heated and cooled repeatedly. Still strong, but different in structure. I thought about the plump man with the soft face who walked to the check-in counter, thinking of Macau. I thought about Doan, who was told it was a show and who believed it. I thought about the defector in Beijing who just wanted to tell what he had seen. About the runner in Singapore who brought me a Korean drink out of pure goodwill. It isn't remorse. Don't call it remorse. That's an imprecise word. It's something else. It's the understanding that you are part of a machine that operates by its own laws, and which you do not control. You think you're in control, until you're not. And you always stop being in control suddenly. My moment wasn't theatrical. There wasn't a point where I decided, that's it, no more. I simply woke up one morning and realized that the next assignment that came, I wouldn't be able to carry it out. Not, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't be able to. Those are different things. What happened next? I won't tell. Not because I don't trust you, but because there are people who still live in those places, and my words could cost them their lives. That is the only line I will not cross. I'll just say this. I'm not in Korea now. I live under a different name in a city where no one knows my face. I eat normal food. Sometimes I watch news from Asia. Not always. Sometimes I can't. I follow the story of those two women from the airport, Doan and City. Both were released. Both are alive. It doesn't make anything better, but I know it. The psychologist I visit every 2 weeks is a good specialist, cautious, doesn't ask unnecessary questions, understands that I don't tell him everything. He once asked, "Is there anything you regret?" I thought for a long time. Then I said, "There's one photograph." He asked, "What's on it?" I said, "A man laughing, genuinely." The psychologist nodded, made a note. I looked out the window and thought in Korean, some things don't turn off. We live on.